It started with a flickering light in aisle 6. No customers. No sound. Just her. Standing behind the bakery glass. She doesn't move. She doesn't blink. And the bread? It's breathing. What you're about to hear is a true account from a night shift worker who barely made it out alive. But before we begin, ask yourself this. Would you step inside a store that watches you back? It was past midnight when the lights flickered for the first time in aisle 6. The Parkside Grocery on Holloway Lane had just transitioned to its new 24-hour format a week ago. Corporate had sent an email about changing shopping patterns and the importance of late-night accessibility. But to the few who actually worked the overnight shift, the real change was palpable in other ways. There was something about the air after midnight. Thick, quiet, and watchful. Brianna, fresh out of high school and stacking shelves to save for community college, had taken the overnight shift thinking it would be easy money. Fewer customers, fewer managers, less noise. She'd always thought of supermarkets as sterile, safe places, lit-up sanctuaries that never felt threatening. But something had changed in her perception by the end of her first week. Tonight, she was alone in the bakery section, aligning loaves of rye in their neat little rows, when the lights overhead flickered just briefly, enough to cast a ripple of darkness that seemed to move on its own. She straightened, glancing around. "Marcus?" she called, her voice tentative. Marcus was the only other worker on the floor that night, the janitor/shelf restocker/security guy who'd been with Parkside for nearly a decade. He rarely said much beyond grunts and the occasional bitter comment about his ex-wife, but he was solid and reliable. The kind of guy you wanted nearby when the silence got too thick. No answer. Brianna pulled her phone from her back pocket. No new messages, no notifications. She was about to put it back when she saw something odd. The time. 12:42 a.m. That didn't match the last time she checked. It had only been 10 minutes ago. Had she really been stocking rye loaves for over half an hour? Another flicker. This time, the power died completely for 3 full seconds. In that short window of darkness, Brianna felt something shift, like the entire store exhaled. She couldn't see her own hand in front of her face. The freezer hum silenced, the overhead buzzing lights died, and somewhere, faint but unmistakable, came a dragging noise. Slow, methodical, something being pulled across linoleum. The lights snapped back on. Everything was in place, except the bakery counter now had a smear of flour across it, one that hadn't been there moments before. It stretched from the corner display to the glass pastry case in a wide arc, as though someone had dragged their hand, or a sack of grain, across it. Brianna moved slowly to the front, heart hammering. "Marcus?" She tried again, her voice louder. Still nothing. She pulled her store-issued walkie-talkie from her belt and clicked the side. "Marcus, come in." Power flickered. "Did you see that?" Silence. Then a burst of static. And then, "She's awake." The voice was not Marcus's. Brianna froze. "She's awake." The voice repeated, softer this time, whispery, layered with a strange distortion. Then the radio crackled and died. She tried to speak, but her mouth was dry. "This isn't funny," she said aloud, more to herself than anyone else. She shoved the radio back onto her belt and walked briskly toward the front end of the store. She needed to find Marcus. The store was oddly warmer than usual. Parkside was always kept just above frigid to preserve produce and discourage loiterers. But now her skin prickled with a clammy heat, like the air had thickened with breath. As she turned the corner past the canned goods aisle, she saw him. Marcus stood at the end of the corridor, facing the frozen section. He was stiff, arms dangling unnaturally at his sides, head tilted slightly forward like a puppet waiting for its next move. "Marcus?" she called, and her voice echoed slightly. Too much for a space that should have swallowed sound in carpet and merchandise. He didn't turn. She stepped closer. "Hey, did you hear that radio? Someone was on it. It wasn't you, right?" He still didn't move. Now she was only a few feet away and could see his shoulders rising and falling. He was breathing shallow, erratic. His lips were moving. "What are you?" She leaned in and heard it. "She's awake. She's awake. She's awake." Over and over, barely audible. A mantra. A warning. Brianna took a step back. "Marcus, stop. What's going on?" His lips halted. His head twisted, sharply bird-like, to face her. His eyes were glassy. And for one awful moment, Brianna saw something reflected in them. Not her own face, but someone else. A pale, wide-eyed woman staring over her shoulder, mouth open in a silent scream. Brianna whirled around. Nothing. When she turned back, Marcus was gone. The aisle was empty. She backed up against a shelf and pulled out her phone again. Still 12:42 a.m. No bars. No Wi-Fi. Even the time seemed frozen. She tried to call 911 anyway. Call failed. She didn't know what was happening, but she had no intention of waiting around to find out. She moved toward the manager's office in the back. The door was supposed to be locked, but she knew where the spare key was kept, taped beneath the fire extinguisher next to the security cabinet. As she jogged past the meat section, she avoided looking too closely at the mirrors overhead. Something about the reflections felt delayed, like the images weren't keeping up with her movement. She reached the fire extinguisher, flipped it up, and grabbed the key. Hands shaking, she jammed it into the office door, turned, and shoved her way inside. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The cameras fed into a grid of black and white monitors along the wall. Normally, there'd be a slow cycle through each aisle, a grainy loop of night vision monotony. But tonight, every screen showed the same thing. The bakery. Each monitor was focused on a slightly different angle of the same space. A single figure standing still behind the glass pastry case. A woman in a white smock and veil. Motionless. Brianna stared. Then, on the center screen, the woman moved. Not walked, just twitched. A sharp, unnatural jerk of the head to one side. Her face was blurred on the screen, smeared by static, but Brianna could make out her mouth. It opened slowly. The lights in the office flickered again. One burst, sending sparks raining down. The monitors began to blur with static and vertical lines. And then, on every screen, the woman turned to face the camera. Her eyes were pits. Not black, worse. Like something had scooped them out and left nothing behind. She raised one hand and pointed directly into the lens. Then the monitors went black. Brianna stumbled back against the desk. She had no explanation for what she'd seen. No rational narrative could anchor her now. She had to leave. She burst out of the office and sprinted for the front entrance. But the automatic doors wouldn't open. She slammed her palm against the glass, screaming, "Help! Somebody! Open up!" The street outside was empty. Holloway Lane was usually quiet at this hour, but there should have been something. A car, a pedestrian, a bird, a breeze. Nothing. She turned and ran to the emergency exit near the dairy cooler. The push-bar door screeched open, and immediately an alarm shrieked into the stillness. But it didn't sound right. Not metallic. Not mechanical. It sounded like screaming. Real human screaming. Brianna stumbled back from the exit as the noise grew louder. And then it stopped. Just like that. Silence returned. She turned in a slow circle. And that's when she saw the footprints. Damp, bare footprints on the floor, leading from the dairy aisle toward her. She hadn't heard them approach. The prints were delicate, feminine, but elongated with strange ridges, as if whoever had made them didn't quite know how to walk. She followed them with her eyes and slowly raised her head to meet their source. The woman from the cameras stood at the far end of the aisle, no longer on screen. Her smock was damp with some kind of dark fluid. Her arms dangled too low, hands nearly grazing the floor. The veil was gone, revealing a face that shouldn't have been. Pale, sagging, jaw hanging open, as though unhinged. Her eyes were blank, not white or black, but foggy, cataract voids. She stepped forward. Brianna turned and ran. Through the cereal aisle, past the produce, behind the registers. The lights above her flickered in time with her footsteps, as though the building itself was reacting to her panic. She ducked behind a register and curled up small. Silence. She covered her mouth to muffle her ragged breaths. From the other side of the store came a dragging sound again. Closer this time. Then a soft voice, like wind through teeth. "She's awake." Something heavy toppled in aisle 5. Can rolled out slow, steady. Clink, clink, clink. "She's awake." Brianna wanted to scream, to run, to vanish, but she stayed frozen. And then, a hand clamped onto her shoulder. She shrieked and lashed out. "Whoa, it's me!" Marcus stumbled back, hands raised. He looked shaken but lucid, normal, alive. Brianna nearly collapsed. "Where the hell were you?" I don't know. I blacked out near the stockroom. Something's wrong here. We have to go." She didn't need convincing. They bolted to the loading dock. The back gate was chained, but Marcus had the keys. As he fumbled with the lock, Brianna glanced over her shoulder. The bakery lights were back on. The woman stood in the same position again, watching. But this time, she was smiling. The next day, Brianna didn't show up for work. Neither did Marcus. Technically, she was scheduled. But after what happened, or what she thought had happened, nothing could convince her to return. She'd spent the whole morning locked in her room. Lights on, blinds drawn, eyes red and raw from tears and exhaustion. Her mother banged on the door around noon, worried sick, but Brianna couldn't explain. There were no words to make someone believe that something was wrong inside a grocery store. And yet, she knew she wasn't insane. The memory of the woman's eyes, that clouded, milky fog, kept flashing into her thoughts. The whisper, "She's awake." The static on the monitors. The damp footprints. The voice over the radio that wasn't Marcus. None of it was a dream. She had bruises on her arm where Marcus grabbed her. A slice across her palm from when she'd fallen on a shelf edge in the scramble to flee. It was real. She was real. And Parkside Grocery was not what it seemed. By nightfall, Brianna had resolved to find Marcus. He wasn't answering his phone, but she remembered where he lived. A dingy complex called Elm Hollow Apartments, about 5 blocks from the store. He'd once offered her a ride when it was raining after shift. She remembered the number scrawled on the side of the building in fading paint. Unit 4B. The walk was cold and quiet. She wore a hoodie, kept her head down. Her legs shook with each step, but she forced herself to go. She needed answers. Elm Hollow looked worse at night. The stairwells were rusted. The lights flickered like they were mimicking Parkside's own death throes, and the entire place smelled of mildew and stale cigarettes. She knocked once on 4B. No answer. Then twice more. The door creaked open on the third knock. Inside was darkness. "Marcus?" she called softly, pushing the door open with 2 fingers. Still no answer. The living room was a mess. Takeout boxes, newspapers, a cracked TV screen, a recliner covered in an old quilt. But it wasn't disarray that unsettled her. It was what was missing. The kitchen lights were on, dim yellow bulbs, and the walls were covered in sticky notes. Hundreds of them, some blank, some filled with looping scrawl. As she walked closer, Brianna saw they all said variations of the same thing. "She's not asleep. She watches through the cameras. The bakery is the cradle. Don't speak her name." One note, written in red marker and larger than the rest, was pressed against the refrigerator. "The bread is her flesh. The pastry her offering." Brianna stumbled back. "What the hell, Marcus?" A thud sounded behind her. She turned fast. Nothing. Just the hallway. But she saw movement. A sliver of it, disappearing around the corner. A shadow. She followed. The hallway led to a closed bedroom door, slightly ajar. "Marcus?" she said, voice trembling. From the other side came a faint, rhythmic whisper. "She's awake! She's awake!" She pushed the door open slowly. The room was dark, save for a small desk lamp in the corner. Marcus sat on the edge of his bed, rocking back and forth, his arms wrapped tightly around his knees. He didn't look up. "Marcus," Brianna said, stepping in. "It's me, Brianna, from work." He didn't stop rocking. "She's awake. She knows we saw her. She was sleeping before, but the flicker woke her." Brianna's skin crawled. "Who is she?" At that, Marcus looked up. His eyes were wild, bloodshot. "You saw her, didn't you?" Brianna didn't answer, but her face gave it away. "She's part of the store. Not in it, part of it. Like fungus in the walls. She's always been there. Feeding." "Feeding on what?" Marcus gave a short, bitter laugh. "Memory, fear, blood, whatever's available. That place, Parkside, it's her nest. Built over the old bakery, the original one. Holloway Sweets. Place burned down in the 60s. A woman died in there. They said she got trapped in the ovens. Never found the body." Brianna stepped back. "Come on. That sounds like an old ghost story. I worked the night shift for years. I ignored it. Weird things happen sometimes, power surges, flickering cameras, people hearing voices. I thought it was just a creepy old building." He shook his head slowly. "But last night was different. That wasn't the first time she appeared to me. But it was the first time she came into the store. She's always stayed in the walls, in the cameras, whispering. Something must have changed. Something let her out." Brianna swallowed. "What do we do?" Marcus stared at the floor. "We don't go back. Ever. We stay out. We warn others. But no one will believe us. But she's still in there. And we're still alive. That should have been the end of it. Packed in shadows. A silent understanding never to return." But 2 days later, Parkside made the news. Security guard found dead inside grocery freezer. The article was short. No signs of forced entry. No suspects. The body was found frozen in a kneeling position. Palms flat against the glass. Mouth open in a scream. His name was Tony Cardenas, mid-50s, retired cop, second week on the job. Brianna saw the photo on her phone and felt bile rise in her throat. Behind the body, barely visible through the freezer door, was a smear of red in the shape of a handprint. A woman's hand. She called Marcus. Voicemail. She went back to his apartment. No answer. When she finally got in, the door was unlocked. The place had been cleared out. No more sticky notes. No red marker messages. No desk lamp. Just dust outlines where furniture had been. And something else. On the bathroom mirror, written in soap. "She's in the bread." Brianna didn't sleep that night. Or the one after. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the monitors again. The static, the woman's smile, the unnatural stillness of her body like a mannequin waiting to lurch. She couldn't ignore it. She needed to go back. Not alone. She texted Marcy, her friend from school who'd worked the register at Parkside the summer before. Brianna didn't tell her everything, just enough. A death at the store, weird power outages. A mystery no one else seemed to care about. Marcy was curious. She was also bored and looking for distraction. "I'm down," she wrote, "as long as we're in and out." Brianna picked her up at 11:45 p.m. They parked behind the store near the loading dock. The emergency lights were on, casting a sickly green glow over the asphalt. Brianna had swiped her old keycard before she quit. She didn't know if it still worked, but luck, or something else, let them through. Inside was cold and too quiet. The hum of the refrigerators was louder than she remembered, like it was the only heartbeat left in the place. There were no employees in sight. No customers. Marcy flicked on her phone light. "Creepy vibe. You sure it's open?" "It's always open," Brianna said softly. "That's the problem." They moved through the produce section, past end caps of cereal and detergent, toward the bakery. Brianna paused before they reached it. "What are we looking for?" Marcy asked. "Proof," Brianna replied. "Or maybe a way to stop her." They reached the glass pastry case. The lights above it were dimmer than the rest of the store, flickering in a slow, erratic rhythm. The air was thicker here, dusty but also sweet like burnt sugar. Marcy crouched to peer inside the case. Nothing weird, just croissants and muffins. Then she gasped. "What?" Brianna said, stepping beside her. One of the muffins was moving. No pulsing. A slight, rhythmic contraction, like breathing. Brianna leaned closer. It stopped, then cracked. Just a little. A seam opened along the muffin side, no filling, no chocolate chips. Just a small sliver of something dark red, glistening in the light. They both stumbled back. "What the hell?" Marcy whispered. Then the speaker system, long thought broken, came to life with a burst of static. And a voice. Sweet. Female. Soft as cotton candy. Fresh bread, baked daily. Then laughter. Gentle. Then louder. Then wrong. The lights flickered. The monitors in the manager's office. They could see them from where they stood. All lit up at once. And on every screen, her. The woman. No longer behind the counter. Now, in the aisles. Walking. Toward them. The image on the monitors shouldn't have been moving. But it was. The woman in white. The same pale, waxy figure that haunted Brianna's dreams. Was walking. Not fluidly, not naturally. Each step looked like it was being forced through invisible sludge. But she was moving, and worse, she was closer with every flicker of the screen. One frame showed her in aisle 2, another in front of the freezer section. A third. "She's right behind us," Brianna whispered. She grabbed Marcy's wrist and bolted. They sprinted down the household goods aisle, their sneakers slapping the linoleum floor, dodging mop handles and fallen cans. The entire store began to hum, deep and pulsing, like a living thing waking up around them. The lights dimmed again, just like the night Marcus had gone silent. A rotten smell filled the air. Yeast and burning flesh, layered with something older. Mold, maybe, or time itself rotting. "Where are we going?" Marcy cried out. "The basement," Brianna said. "There's a hatch near the stockroom. I never went down there, but Marcus said they used to store the old bakery equipment below." "Wait, and that's where you want to go?" But Brianna didn't stop. They rounded a corner and slipped past the break room and toward the rear stockroom door. It was unlocked, or maybe it had never latched. Inside, the air was denser, warm and stale, the kind of heat that made your skin itch. There, half hidden beneath a rack of paper towel pallets, was the hatch. An old rusted metal slab with a ringed handle. Brianna knelt and pulled. It gave easily, too easily, like it had been waiting for her. A breath of cold air rushed up from the hole below, smelling of flour, ash, and something faintly sweet. "No way," Marcy muttered. "Nope. Hard pass. This is all way beyond me." Brianna looked back at her, face pale. "We have to know. She's awake because of something. If there's even a chance we can stop her." "She's a ghost." "She's not a ghost." Marcy stared. "What?" "She's not just a spirit. Not some lost soul. Ghosts don't infect buildings. They don't bleed into walls. She's alive. In a way. Maybe part of the fire. Maybe part of the flower. Maybe something worse." Marcy glanced at the hatch. "You're insane." "I wish I was." Brianna took a breath and climbed down the ladder. Every rung vibrated with a low hum. The store's heartbeat, she realized. Faint. Rhythmic. Wrong. Marcy sighed above. God damn it. Then came the creak of her footsteps. She followed. The ladder descended into complete blackness. But when Brianna's feet touched concrete, lights flared on. Ancient yellow bulbs that buzzed angrily overhead. They were in a long hallway, narrow, crumbling, lined with rusting pipes and old grocery signage. One banner hung loosely over a cracked tile wall. Holloway Suites, since 1949. "Welcome to the past," Marcy muttered. They walked slowly, every footstep echoing too long. The hallway branched into a wider chamber. It looked like a forgotten storage room, or maybe an old kitchen. Flour dust coated everything in a fine white sheen, like a snowstorm frozen mid-fall. There were massive rusted mixers, baking trays piled like bones, and an ancient, soot-blackened oven half embedded in the wall. On the wall above the oven was something scrawled in charcoal. "We fed her too much." Marcy's voice shook. "Bree, what is this?" But Brianna had already moved toward the oven. The door was ajar. Inside, instead of blackness, was a swirling pattern, like smoke and ash spinning in water. She reached out, hand trembling. Something inside the oven moved. Brianna screamed and fell back as a shape lunged forward. A face. A woman's. Burned, warped, but alive in the ash. Her mouth opened in a silent cry, and then she was gone. "What the hell was that?" Marcy shouted. "She's trapped in there," Brianna said, panting. "Or part of her is." Marcy backed away. "Then let's seal it up and leave." But Brianna was staring at something else. Near the oven was a stack of old paper, moldy logbooks, smeared delivery notes, and one brittle, leather-bound ledger. She flipped it open. Inside were pages of strange recipes. Not just bread or pastries, but rituals. Sacramental brioche veil cake for the watching eye, blood-sweet milk roll. Each one listed ingredients in a strange mix of Latin and English. Each one included chilling directions. Knead the breath into the dough. Speak her name in flour. Bake only under the flickering lights. The final page was half-burned. But one phrase remained. She sleeps in rising yeast. She wakes in the burn. Do not let her bake whole. Brianna closed the book. "We have to destroy the oven." "What?" Marcy said, turning. "It's part of her. That's where it started. That's where she was. Maybe still is. How are we supposed to destroy a steel oven?" Brianna looked around the room, desperate. Then her eyes settled on a red canister in the corner. Old. Metal. Heavy. A gas container. Marcy followed her gaze and groaned. "Nope. I'm not helping you commit arson." "She's already killed someone," Brianna snapped. "She will do it again. Probably already has." Marcy was silent for a long time. Then, quietly, "You said she was already out of the oven. Won't this just piss her off more?" "I don't know," Brianna admitted. "But I know we can't do nothing." Together, they carried the canister to the oven. The smell made their heads swim. Gasoline, soot, and something sickly sweet beneath it all. Brianna poured it slowly, soaking the inside of the oven and the surrounding wall. Then she pulled a lighter from her pocket. A tiny red one she'd carried for her candles. "Wait," Marcy whispered. "What if we can't get out fast enough?" Brianna's voice was steady. "Run when I light it." Marcy didn't argue. She lit the flame. The fire caught immediately, not wild, but hungry. It moved with direction, sliding into the oven like it knew exactly where it needed to go. Flames licked the soot-stained wall. Smoke billowed up, and from inside the fire came a scream. Inhuman, endless. Not just from the oven, but from the walls, the ceiling, the floor. The entire room screamed. The lights exploded overhead. The floor shook. "Go!" Brianna shouted. They ran back down the hall, flames chasing them. The corridor lit up in orange and black. The flour in the air ignited, a giant breath of fire that roared behind them. They reached the ladder. Marcy went first, scrambling like her life depended on it, because it did. Brianna followed, fire singing her heels. They burst into the stockroom, coughing and gasping. The hatch slammed shut behind them, and then silence. Smoke curled from the edges. The hum of the store was gone. Dead. They staggered toward the front of the store. Every screen on the monitor wall was black. Every aisle was empty. The bakery lights had gone out. Brianna stepped forward and looked into the pastry case. No muffins. No croissants. Just ash. 3 days passed. No news. No alarms. No fire reports. Brianna checked every station, every local outlet. There should have been something. The explosion in the basement of a grocery store. Smoke damage. Damage reports. But there was nothing. Parkside Grocery remained open. Still 24 hours. Still spotless. Still waiting. She knew what she'd seen. The fire. The scream from the oven. The walls shuddering like they were gasping out a final breath. But now it was like it never happened. There were no scorch marks near the hatch. No damaged lights. Not even a single camera out of alignment. It was all reset. Erased. Even Marcy had started to doubt it. After the second day, she stopped responding to texts. On the third, she blocked Brianna's number. Alone again, Brianna wandered past Parkside just before midnight. The lights were still on. In the bakery section, behind the pristine glass case, the shelves were full again. Croissants, muffins, bread rolls stacked with perfect symmetry. And in the reflection of the glass, a pale woman in a white smock, standing silently behind the register, her eyes hollow voids. Brianna stumbled backward into the street. It was starting again. Or maybe it never ended. She didn't go home that night. Instead, she went to the library. There were still archives there, real ones, old newspapers, fire department reports, handwritten census books. She needed to understand who the woman was. Not the ghost, not the monster, but the person. Because it had started with a woman. Marcus had said she burned in a bakery. Holloway Sweets. She was a baker, probably local. Trapped in the fire, never found. That much made sense. But what hadn't made sense was why she'd become what she did. Something more than a ghost. Presence. A creature that could twist reality, reshape time, grow back after being burned. The librarian, an older woman with brittle white curls and square glasses, helped her sift through the microfilm. There were fires in the 1960s, all right. One stood out. Bakery fire claims local owner. No body recovered. The article was brief. June 3rd, 1966, a fire destroyed Holloway Sweets Bakery last night around 2:42 a.m. Flames gutted the single-floor building. Firefighters discovered only the charred remains of baking equipment and structural debris. The owner, Miss Lillian Creel, age 37, is presumed dead. Brianna leaned closer. A blurry black and white photo accompanied the article. The face was unmistakable. It was her. Even in the grainy smear, Brianna could see it. The pale eyes, the long nose, the high cheekbones. The woman in the bakery case. The woman from the cameras. Lillian Creel. The article went on to mention a quote from a local neighbor. She was odd. Always baking in the middle of the night. Wouldn't let anyone taste her bread. Said it wasn't for us. Said it was for her. No elaboration on who her was. But in the margin, penciled in faint handwriting, was something else. They say she made bread with more than yeast. Brianna copied every word. When she left the library, it was dawn. The air felt strange again. Not heavy, not thick, just off. Like it was passing through someone else before it reached her lungs. She wasn't going back to Parkside. Not alone. Not again. She needed help. But who would believe her? She sat in her car for nearly an hour, parked near the old cemetery, watching the mist coil around gravestones. Then suddenly a memory struck her. A moment from weeks ago, the voice on the walkie-talkie. The one that wasn't Marcus. It had said something. She's awake. And then, almost beneath the whisper, another voice. Quieter. Garbled. She's watching. That voice had a different tone. Higher. Urgent. There was someone else in that building. Someone or something trying to help. Maybe even another survivor. She had to get back in. This time, she went in through the roof. She climbed the fire escape of the connected thrift store and dropped down onto the Parkside rooftop, flashlight clutched tight, breath fogging the air. She found a vent near the rear HVAC unit, half unscrewed, rusted from rain. Inside was dark and tight, but passable. As she crawled, dust coated her lips. Something else too, a fine powder. Flour. It lined the inside of the vent like a second skin. She smeared it with her sleeve and kept going. When she dropped down into the employee restroom, Everything was silent. No humming, no buzz of lights, no ambient playlist. Just silence. She stepped into the main store. Empty. Not just of people, of sound. Even her footsteps made no noise. She passed the cereal aisle. Frozen goods. The meat counter. Everywhere she turned, shelves were stocked. Impossibly so. More than she'd ever seen. Almost too perfect. The labels all faced the same direction. Each can aligned exactly. No dents. No scuffs. It was rehearsed. As if the store was performing normalcy for no one. She reached the bakery and stared. This time, the glass was fogged. Inside the case, the pastries moved ever so slightly, like breathing. Brianna reached for the camera on her phone. She had to document this. She focused on the closest item. A perfectly shaped roll, golden brown. She zoomed in, and then it opened. Right down the middle like a splitting wound. Inside wasn't bread. It was a human eye, wide and bloodshot, staring directly into her camera. She dropped the phone and screamed. The speaker system came alive again. This time, not a voice. A sound. Sobbing. High-pitched. Womanly. Shattered. Then laughter. Hysterical. And then the lights turned red. A siren blared, not an emergency tone. A warping, spiraling wail that shook the shelves. She turned to run. But the store changed. Aisles shifted. The building bent. Like a maze twisting behind her. She was no longer near the bakery. She stood in the greeting card section, though it had no ceiling. Just endless black above her. Cards flapped open on their own. Each one had a different image inside. Burned hands. Mouths full of teeth. A smock stained with blood. Each message written in looping cursive. She remembers you. You tried to burn her. Your soul smells like flour. Brianna backed away into someone. She spun around. It was a girl. Barely 12. Pale, thin, wearing a Parkside apron 4 sizes too large. Who are you? Brianna gasped. The girl blinked slowly. Ellie. I was stuck here. For how long? She looked up. There's no time here. Brianna's throat tightened. How did you survive? I didn't. Ellie smiled sadly. Not all of me. She reached out and took Brianna's hand. Her skin was cold. Damp. Like dough that had risen too long. She's not whole. You broke her. She wants your shape now. What does that mean? She's trying to become real again. But she needs to be baked. And for that, she needs an oven. Brianna's heart pounded. I destroyed it. Ellie tilted her head. Did you? From behind them came a low, deep cracking sound. Like something opening. Brianna turned. In the center of the store, the floor was breaking apart. Tiles crumbled inward. A circular opening formed, lined with blackened stone. A new oven, forming on its own. The air heated instantly. The smell of flour and bone overwhelmed her. She's coming back, Ellie said. Brianna looked at her. Help me stop her. The girl squeezed her hand. There's only one way. Tell me. You have to bake yourself. The oven yawned open before her. The floor of the Parkside Grocery was gone, replaced by cracked stone and coiling heat, as if the very ground had peeled itself back to reveal something ancient and hungry. Flames licked upward in slow pulses. Not fire exactly, but something like it, light that throbbed and breathed and reached. Brianna stood at the edge of the pit, clutching the hand of the pale girl named Ellie, whose eyes were now full of both sorrow and warning. You're telling me to die? Brianna said, barely able to form the words. Ellie didn't flinch. No, I'm telling you to become. The heat rose up and wrapped itself around them, curling across their skin like steam through a kitchen. The air tasted like burnt cinnamon. In the center of the swirling blaze, the flames parted, and a shape began to emerge. She came again. Lillian Creel. Not a memory. Not a ghost. A body forming in the oven like dough in proof. Limbs fusing from ashen air. Her face stretching forward as if drawn by some invisible thread. Her white smock was stained with soot and blood. Her eyes, hollow sockets, seemed to breathe. She looked more solid now than ever before. Almost done. Almost risen. No, Brianna whispered. I burned her once. She wasn't finished, Ellie said. Then how do I stop her? Brianna asked, turning to the girl. Ellie took her free hand and pressed it against Brianna's chest. You finish what she started. You become the bread. Brianna recoiled. I don't even know what that means. She tried to bake herself into the world. It didn't work. She died half-formed. But you're still alive. If you go in willingly, you can change the outcome. Shape it. Into what? Not her. Brianna looked back toward the oven. Lillian stepped 1 foot onto the surface. Her form rippled and twitched like rising dough too long in the heat. Her smile cracked across her face like a breaking crust. The building shuddered again. Shelves toppled. Ceiling tiles fell in slow motion. The lights strobed red and white, red and white. She wants to bake herself into everyone, Ellie said. Every customer, every worker, every can and shelf and checkout lane. A store that lives. A mouth that never stops chewing. Brianna staggered back. I can't. You're the only thing she remembers clearly. You burned her. You survived. You left a mark. She's been molding herself around your shape ever since. What happens if I go in? I don't know, Ellie said honestly. No one ever has. Lillian stepped closer. Now only a few feet away. She wasn't rushing. She didn't have to. Everything was folding into her. Shelves collapsed into flour. The lights dripped down like melted sugar. The entire store sank, the air thickening into molasses. Brianna turned and ran. She bolted toward aisle 7, ducking past falling cereal boxes, slipping through streams of scorched milk spilling from shattered fridges. But every corner she turned brought her back to the oven. The layout was gone. There was no exit. The store had become a spiral, a coiled intestine, a digestive tract, and at its center, the oven. Waiting. Let me out, she screamed. The lights went dark. And then the hum returned. That old, electric heartbeat of the store. Only now, it pulsed through the soles of her feet. You are already inside, a voice said. Came from nowhere and everywhere. You never left. It was Lillian. Her voice was wrong. Doubled, tripled, echoing like it was being shouted through a hallway of mouths. You opened the oven, she said. You woke me. You brought me back. Brianna fell to her knees. She was shaking. There was no out. Not in the normal way. The only way forward was through. Slowly, she stood. The oven flared. Flames roared upward, but not to burn. To embrace. Ellie watched from the edge. I'll hold the path open, she said softly. Go. Brianna took a breath and stepped in. It wasn't heat. Not really. Not pain either. It was memory. She fell through layers of scent and sound. Her grandmother's kitchen, cinnamon rolls on Christmas, the warmth of sun on rising bread. Then colder things, her father's silence. The first time she stood in the bakery aisle alone at night. Marcus whispering, she's awake. The memories swirled around her. Then came Lillian. They stood inside a space made of flour and fire, surrounded by shelves stacked with time. You could have been part of it, Lillian said. Her form shifted, no longer monstrous. Just a woman, sad, cracked. I didn't want this, Brianna said. You came back. To stop you. You can't, Lillian whispered. You already fed me. Every time you feared me. Every time you ran. You kneeled at the case. You tasted the bread. I never. You did. Brianna looked down. In her hands was a roll. Fresh. Warm. Her fingerprints already sunk into its soft skin. She dropped it. Not anymore, she said. The fire began to shake. Lillian snarled. You can't unmake me. No, Brianna said. But I can remake you. She reached into the swirling ash. And she spoke. Not a word she understood. But something ancient. Something passed through flour and hands and flame. The fire shifted. The oven changed. Instead of flames, there was a breeze. Instead of heat, peace. Lillian screamed, but she wasn't burning. She was baking, crusting, solidifying, and then she cracked apart, into dust. Brianna woke up on the bakery floor. The lights above flickered, but only once. The store was quiet, still, normal. The cameras on the wall blinked lazily from aisle to aisle. The monitors showed an empty bakery, empty produce, empty registers. No smoke, no fire. She stood slowly. The pastry case was clean. Inside were muffins, normal ones. She stepped toward the glass. Her reflection looked back. But in the far edge of the mirrored case, just the corner of the frame, she thought she saw Ellie. Smiling, then gone. She walked out through the front doors. This time they opened easily. Outside, the night air was crisp and cool. The sun was just beginning to rise. The world was waking up. And Parkside Grocery slept. For now. They say the cameras are still rolling. That if you pause the footage just right, you'll see her, standing behind you, watching from the reflection of the pastry case. One by one, the employees are vanishing. But the shelves are always full. So tell me, who's stocking the bread now? If you want the truth, the full story, you know where to come back to. Subscribe. Before she finds you first.